You know how some elections just feel like a handful of big names clashing for the top spot? Well, the US presidential election of 1852 wasn't one of those. In fact, it was full of surprises, last hurrahs, and a lot of folks you might not expect. Let's start with Franklin Pierce. If that name doesn't ring a bell, you're not alone. He was basically a political nobody outside his home state of New Hampshire. The Democratic Party was in a jam. Their usual stars kept fighting, and no one could agree on a favorite. So, after a whole lot of arguing at their convention, they landed on Pierce, the ultimate dark horse candidate. He was young, he was handsome, and he was just bland enough to unite a divided party. Sometimes that's exactly what you need to win. Now, the Whigs. This was their last stand as a major party, and they pinned all their hopes on Winfield Scott. Scott was a genuine American war hero, famous for his victories in the Mexican-American War. But politics is rough. Scott struggled to hold together a party that was split right down the middle over the question of slavery. Even though he had a shiny resume, he just couldn't rally the Whigs like past heroes had. And what about Millard Fillmore? He was the sitting president, but his own party basically booted him to the curb. Fillmore's supporters were so upset, they nominated Daniel Webster as their independent Whig candidate. Webster was a legendary orator, but by then his time had passed. And sadly, he passed away just days before the election. The Free Soil Party also took a shot at the White House. They nominated Senator John P. Hale, a fierce opponent of slavery. This was their last presidential run, just like the Whigs. Their message was clear: no new slave states. But it just didn't catch on with most voters. And that's not all. The political scene in 1852 was crowded. Southern Rights Party, Native American Party, Liberty Party. They all ran candidates, but together, they got less than 1% of the vote. It was a sign that the country's big political battles were boiling down to just a few major players. So, how did it all end? Franklin Pierce, the dark horse, stormed to victory. He won in a landslide, carrying all but 4 states. The Whigs were crushed, and after this, they faded away from history. For Pierce, it was the start of a tough presidency. For the country, it was the calm before the storm. A storm that would lead just a few years later to the Civil War. Looking back, the election of 1852 wasn't just about picking a president. It was the end of an era for some parties, the last act for some big names, and the beginning of a new and dangerous chapter in American history. Thanks for watching. If you learned something new today, hit that like button and subscribe for more History Made Simple.